Overrated.
Overhyped and overrated.
Here is the most overrated.
Most overrated.
Overrated. Man is right now, he's the most overrated in basketball. Is he a good basketball?
What's up, guys, and welcome to the list of the 10 most overrated players in the NBA today. Just to preface, these are only opinions, and every player on this list is obviously a solid ball player. It's just sometimes their abilities are overhyped. I know not everyone is going to agree with this, and honestly it was quite hard to find 10 players to even put on here. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy the video. Please remember to like and subscribe if you love NBA content. First up, we have Kyle Kuzma. This was a tough one, as I get the situation he's in at the moment is pretty hard on him as a developing player. He's surrounded by two massive stars day in and day out. I know the NBA community is pretty divided on him at the moment. He has a ton of pressure and scrutiny on him, as the Lakers are pretty much in title or bust mode as LBJ is nearing the end of his prime. Last year, he was essentially the second scoring option to Bron, and even the go-to guy at some points when LBJ was injured. But now, under Frank Vogel, he's coming off the bench, barely getting 25 minutes a game, and is clearly struggling. So on one hand, you have people saying if he got more minutes, he would score more and be a bit of a beast. But on the other hand, you have people saying if he wasn't in a big market team like LA, no one would even talk about him. And I kind of agree with the latter, which is why he's on this list. Let's be honest, if Kuzma was on a small market team like Detroit, he would barely even be mentioned. But now look at him. He's a 12-point-a-game scorer that is mentioned constantly by media, sitting in the LA Hills, and has what, like 4.7 million followers?
How much do you trust Kuzma?
I don't trust him as far as I can see him.
Now, let's get into his criticisms as an actual ball player. Versatility and depth. Probably his main flaw is his one-sided game. Try and name something he does above average besides score the ball. He doesn't pass very well, he doesn't rebound overly well, his defending is improving but still isn't outstanding by any means. If he isn't scoring on any given night, what is he giving the team? The only thing he does well is score, and he only averages 12 points a game. Plus, he's never been an excellent three-point shooter. He relies heavily on his mid-range game, which in today's NBA is not a solid foundation for a score-first player. I know he is doing this on limited minutes, but the fact that he's on limited minutes just raises red flags to me. Many have started to pick up on Kuzma's lack of defense. Jason Reed of The Last Sports Hub quotes that the team will likely hide him on the defensive end, but creating that mismatch onto him is just going to be a disaster waiting to happen. This is just one of countless times people have picked up on the lack of Kuzma's defense. Despite this, I do quite like him, and there's a reason why he isn't high on this list. He has the potential to blossom with a bit more opportunity from Frank Vogel, so I'm not ruling him out just yet. He's on this list simply just because his name is so popular due to the size of the LA market, yet he isn't even that good. Think about it, his name is bigger than someone like Drew Holiday, yet let's be honest, Holiday would dust him in a 1v1 any day. At the moment, he's averaging 12.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, and a 1.3 assists, which is way down from his 18 points last year. He's still young and he has time to switch things around. Honestly, he could be a whole different player if he was on another team with more opportunity. Next up, we have Danny Green. It's probably looking like I'm a massive Laker hater right now, but trust me, I actually like them. This one was hard too. I just feel as though Danny Green has always been on good teams. It's a fact of the NBA, you can't be a good player unless you win. But all of Green's success has been off the backs of the San Antonio Big Three, Kawhi at the Spurs and Toronto, and now LeBron and AD at the Lakers. For such a talked about player, the dude only averages 8 points, 3 rebounds, and 1 assist. 8 points. I mean, he's literally only on the team to score and play some defense. Sure, he's a good 3-point shooter, but he's getting paid $15 million a year to score 8 points a game. I mean, to me, I think he gets slightly too much recognition for what he does. People talk about him as if he's some vital piece to the Lakers just because he shoots threes. To put his contract in more perspective, he gets paid more than players like Marcus Smart, Spencer Dinwiddie, and even has the same contract as Dennis Schroeder. I think most can agree that he's just not in their league. You may hate me for this one, but Mike Conley is coming in at number 8. At times, he's been labelled underrated for a while, as he was snubbed of All-Star a few times, I guess you could make the argument for. And although he's still a good-ass player, the reality is he's not reliable. Not only because his body is fragile, but he was really exposed this year once he moved out of his comfort zone to the Utah Jazz. At the moment, he's sitting on a real plus-minus of negative 0.62, which is worse than players like Austin Rivers and Michael Carter-Williams. He's currently the 55th best point guard in the NBA in real plus-minus, which is pretty bad. Obviously, his main issue is staying healthy, which, as harsh as it sounds, needs to be a genuine critique. If he can't play, it's hard to make a solid argument about his talent. It is definitely not any fault of his own, but he's only played 82 games once in his career. He only averages about 62 games a season, so you can't really rely on him when you need him. This year, he's averaging 13.9 points, 3.2 rebounds, and 4.3 assists, but shooting 40% from the field. I mean, people consider him a borderline all-star, yet the second he moves to the Jazz, he starts averaging 14 points. It's just meh. Coming in at number 7, we have Al Horford. Al has always been recognised as a player that can have a good game even if it doesn't show up on the stat sheet, which in my opinion is 100% true, but only to a certain extent. This year at Philly has been really bad for Al Horford, and it might be time to recognise that he's just slipping as a player. For a player that is considered basically a star, he only averages 12 points, 6.9 rebounds, and 4.1 assists, which overall is down 2 points, 1 rebound, and 1 assist from his career all numbers. At the moment, his real plus minus is negative 0.34. This is worse than power forwards like Eric Micah, Jabari Parker, Mike Muscala, and even Mason Plumlee. Like, let's be real, those players aren't special. I understand that he does things that may not show up on the stat sheet, and maybe that was true for the Celtic days. But now, I think that he's at Philly, it's really not true. He doesn't do that much for the team. I think he especially struggles with Embiid and Simmons on the floor, fighting for the ball and not really knowing where to go at times. Essentially at the moment, I think it's a combination of him not working with the Philly team and him aging. So it may be time to recognise that he just isn't the player he once was. In July 2019, Nico Martinez of Fadeaway World conducted a survey in which Al Horford was ranked the number 1 most overrated player in the NBA. I think this was due mostly to his massive contract compared to the level of output he's producing this season. He was even coming off the bench for a bit, which to me is a sign that Brett Brown's even seeing he's declining as a player. To add onto this, statistically, his defense is slipping, which is supposed to be something he is well known for. He is averaging under 1 block and under 1 steal a game. Again, I understand sometimes defense doesn't always show up on the stat sheet, but in almost all cases, solid ball players have some sort of stats supporting their level of output, and it's getting harder to make the case for Al Horford at the age of 33. Next up, we have DeAndre Jordan. It's definitely time for DJ's Lob City days to be left in the past. I mean, DJ has a number of things that contribute to his perception being better than his reality. First of all, his flashy dunks act as a point of reference in his game. I mean, people remember the most flashy parts in a game, right? But just because you're a good dunker and athletic, it doesn't mean your game has substance. Furthermore, his offensive abilities are one of the most limited in the NBA today. I mean, he literally only dunks and catches lobs. This causes him to get seriously lost on certain plays that don't involve him, which are occurring a lot more now that the Nets have a lot of offensive options. At the start of the season, he was supposed to be a major piece in the Nets rotation, alongside Kyrie and Durant. Obviously, due to injuries, we can't see that play out, but it doesn't even seem to matter, because he's coming off the bench behind Jarrett Allen for most of the season anyway. This season, he's averaging 8 points, 10 rebounds, and 1.9 assists, which is worse than Allen in essentially the same amount of minutes. Also, Jordan has a real plus-minus of negative 0.3, whilst Allen's is 1.24. So, when Allen is on the floor, it's hard to argue that the Nets are worse.
And we put him on the show. Here, DeAndre Jordan is a good example, Chauncey, of when the motor's running.
Another critique for DJ is that his defense is just not as good as it's hyped up to be. He averages 0.3 steals, which is really low, and under 1 block a game, which is pretty bad for an athletic, under-the-rim type big man that he is. And at number 5, we have Andrew Wiggins. Last year, he probably would have come in at number 1, but he has deserved a bit of leeway due to his boosted numbers this year. He is slightly improving this year, but it's hard not to think that this just isn't another occasional trend before he inevitably starts being inconsistent again. I mean, Amin El-Hassan of ESPN thinks so.
This is who he's been. He does it for a little bit, and we get excited like, ooh, it's finally coming together for us.
Take a look at this graph on Andrew Wiggins' scoring throughout the year. I mean, most high draft picks have an upward trend in points each year. But with Wiggins, it seems like you don't know what you're going to get each season. Number 1 picks always have this thing on them that they carry throughout their career, which contributes to the attention he gets. But just look at the number 1 picks in recent years. He's by far one of the worst. This year, he's averaging 21.8 points, 5.1 rebounds, and 3.7 assists, which is much better than his career numbers being 19.7 points, 4.4 rebounds, and 2.3 assists. But this is expected as Jimmy Butler has left Minnesota, Cat was injured for a long time, Jeff Teague left, D Rose left, Robert Covington left. I mean, he literally has all the opportunity in the world, and he only averages 2 more points a game. The Minnesota team was pretty trash, and Golden State was probably worse without Curry. Yet, he still only averaged 22 points at his brief time at Golden State. I think there's also a massive issue with his work ethic. I mean, we all remember when Jimmy Butler called him out for not caring about winning. And at number 4, we have Dennis Smith Jr. I mean, I'll be pretty brief on D. Smith, but all the hype that he once had as a rookie should probably start to end now. This year at New York, he's averaging 5.5 points and struggling even for a spot on their roster. Yet, the credibility he had from his rookie season still is carried over. He's essentially the 3rd string point guard behind Elfrid Payton and Frank Ntilikina, which is ironic if you guys remember what LeBron said about D. Smith being drafted after Frank.
The Knicks passed on a really good one, and Dallas got the diamond in the rough. He should be a Knick. It's gonna make some headlines, but he should be a Knick. But
I think the beginning of the end for D. Smith was Luka coming to Dallas. Doncic took the ball out of his hands, and I feel like D. Smith really relies on his confidence a lot, and I think it evidently impacted him as a player. Despite this, I really like him as a player, and he seems like an awesome guy off court. He should 100% leave New York City and maybe go to a smaller market team so he can get more minutes and work on his confidence issues. Also, the Knicks fans can be pretty intense, so it may not be best for D. Smith's headspace.
Crowd still booing Smith Jr. and this shooter. And the chant of "We Want Frank" is starting there at the Garden.
I should also mention that there was a death in his family this year, and that may have really impacted him, so I hope he's okay and I hope he turns it around. Now, to start off the top 3, Andre Drummond. The big man's rebounding and double-double numbers really overshadow how impactful he really is. I mean, he really isn't that valuable anymore. The traditional 5-man just doesn't work like it used to. Look at the best centers in the NBA right now. Nikola Jokic, Karl Anthony Towns, Joel Embiid, Nikola Vucevic. I mean, they can all shoot and do things differently to the traditional center. Similar to DJ, he really just dunks, lays up the ball, and catches lobs. He's also sitting on a real plus-minus of negative 1.24. This is ranked behind centers like Bismack Biyombo, Myers Leonard, and even Luke Cornett. I mean, this is a guy that is supposed to be one of the best centers in the NBA, and he clearly just isn't helping his team win games. Which brings me to my next point. I don't think he cares about winning as much as other NBA players. He likes being comfortable. This was shown when he didn't want to leave Detroit earlier in the season. And let's be honest, I think he knows deep down he was never going to win anything substantial in Detroit. He's also pretty slow-footed, lazy off pick and rolls, and look at his body. I mean, he has the tools to be an elite defender, but I think he's just comfortable racking up easy double-doubles despite the fact whether they win or lose. And well, the NBA has noticed this. The Cavs got him for Brandon Knight, John Henson, and a 2023 second round pick in a trade. Like, don't tell me that Drummond is valuable when Detroit gave him away for that. I don't care that his contract is coming to an end. An all-star level player being traded for that, I mean, there's something seriously wrong in my opinion. Coming in at the number 2 spot, we have DeMar DeRozan. Although DeRozan can be an amazing scorer, he has been one of the most overrated players for quite a few years now. Firstly, one of his biggest flaws as a player is that he often struggles in big games. A few examples spring to mind when I think of DeRozan in big playoff games. Here, Chris Smooth sums up his playoff game against the Bucks pretty well.
DeMar DeRozan only had 8 points this game. He was 0 of 8 from the field. He choked!
Or the time he was versing the Cavs in the 2018 playoffs, and he scored 8 points once again. And then as the team's best player, he was benched for the whole 4th quarter in probably the biggest game of the whole season.
Let's have a conversation about DeMar DeRozan, who was benched in the 4th quarter of the Raptors' loss to the Cavs in Game 3.
And just one last example, even at his new team, the Spurs, Pop benched him in the 4th quarter.
Game-leading 3-point shot for Bryn Forbes coming up here. And it rolls around. Everyone in the arena is on the edge of their seat. And look at DeMar DeRozan's face. It's just no emotion, no reaction. Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Another massive issue regarding his game is the lack of 3-point shooting. The thing he is known for is scoring, right? But he literally only takes shots inside the 3. To put this in comparison, he's only taken a few more 3-point shots than Ben Simmons this year, the guy that gets that much hate for not shooting 3s. And when DeRozan does shoot 3s, he's shooting 26% from the arc. And one year, he even shot 15%. Yeah, take a look at this graph. Year by year, the NBA is adapting and taking more and more 3s. But DeRozan is living in the past and not evolving his game. He should be in the gym every single day working on expanding his game. According to Bleacher Report, when he was at the Raptors, quote, Toronto were a statistically worse team with him on the floor for 5 straight seasons. Adding on to this, Bleacher Report also created their own overrated list, in which they rated him the 3rd most overhyped player in the last 50 years. And for the most overrated player in the NBA today, Draymond Green. In 2019, the NBA conducted an anonymous NBA survey in which Draymond Green was voted the most overrated player in the whole league. He received 17% of all the votes in the NBA, which is already a massive red flag. This year, he's averaging 8 points, 6.2 rebounds, and 6.2 assists, which, for a presumed Hall of Famer in his prime, he's still 30 years old, remember, with all the opportunity in the world, with no Curry, no Durant, no Clay. I mean, it's pretty bad. This just proves that he's been hiding behind stars for most of his good years, which is only about 3 to 4 good years, I might add. All of these shots were made so much easier by the defenders being consumed with guarding the 3 best shooters in the world. Now, let's get into his best asset as a player, his defending, which I also believe is overhyped. Don't worry, I'm not trying to say that he isn't a great defender, but he's certainly not an all-time great defender like he makes it out to be. I will say this, he's an elite team defender, but he's not an elite one-on-one defender. I mean, his heavy frame doesn't allow for his footwork to be elite, and although he is good, he isn't always coming out on top in a one-on-one. And as for his elite team defending and coordinating on the court, one can even argue that this was enhanced heavily by his elite teammates that he was surrounded by. His defending is statistically declining as well. Look at this graph made by the People's Kid, plotting his defensive ratings substantially sliding each year. Over the course of 4 years, it has dropped by over 20 ratings. And I don't think it's a surprise that his worst year by far has come in the year when all the other stars are injured. One last critique I'll add about Green is that he's also an awful 3-point shooter. Actually, he's just an awful scorer. Shooting 27% from 3 this season, which is pretty bad. Take a look at these graphs that are also made by the People's Kid. This shows the decline in Draymond's 3-point shot each year. Again, just over the span of 4 years, it's dropped from 38% all the way to 30%. I will add that this graph was only created 5 games into the season, and at the time of the NBA hiatus, as I said before, it's dropped even further to 27%. Anyways, that wraps up the 10 most overrated players in the NBA today. I totally understand some of you guys may disagree. I feel like a lot of you won't agree with the Conley one, which is totally fair. Let me know what you guys' opinions are down below. I'm keen to see what you guys have to say. Plus, if you guys have any other players that you think are overrated, comment them down below. Anyway, I'll also be shouting out every single person who subscribes from this video in the next video. Plus, anyone who follows me on Instagram, give me a DM and I'll shout you out straight away as well. Thank you guys for watching. Remember to leave a like. Much love, guys.